Don't ask me what it meant.
Oh, forget it. I'm out of here. That's actually something I was going to touch on a little later. Not what it means, but the foolishness of asking it. I wanted to start out just by setting the stage a little and giving a little bit of context as to where this film fell in Bergman's career at about the midpoint. It sort of stands as a radical reinvention of his filmmaking approach. It's a real break with the past. It comes after his early classics, the films from the 50s that everybody knows, The Seventh Seal, Wild Strawberries, and it comes after the trilogy he made in the early 60s that are sort of known as the Silence of God trilogy, Winter Light, Silence, and Through a Glass Darkly. After that, he made his first film in color, a comedy called All These Women, which was a resounding failure. And there's a sense that in his career he'd reached an impasse, that he had run out of juice and run out of ideas. And he came up with this idea for a film called The Cannibals, in which he intended to cast Liv Ullmann, and was setting it up with financing and getting everything set in place when he fell ill with a viral infection and spent 3 months very, very sick in the hospital, at which point the plans for the film, The Cannibals, fell apart, the funding went away, and he was sort of at a loss with what to do. And the story that he would tell was that he saw a photo of Liv and Bibi Andersson together and sort of thought they look remarkably alike. And from there sprang an idea. I mentioned this story to Liv backstage before, when we were talking before, and she had a rather different take on it. And so I thought I would let you tell the truth.
Well, you know, artists, they are not always truthful, although what they make is truthful. But when they tell the story about themselves privately, he had made a movie called Cannibals, written, and I had one page there, and Bibi Andersson had an incredible role. And he asked me, I was the first non-Swede he would ever have, and I was very proud, and I was looking forward to this one page. And he didn't really know me, but yes, he was wanted to work with me because he met me on the street, and he said, I was together with Bibi Andersson, who was my closest, and he's my closest friend, and he said, oh, would you like to be in a movie? And I said, oh, yes, absolutely. And then I got this one page, and Bibi had this enormous thing. And I think he suddenly felt, I don't like my movie, my script. And what he did, he said he was sick. And he went to a hospital where he stayed 14 days, to be really honest. And Bibi and I, we were in deep sorrow, and we went on a cultural travel by ourselves to Poland and to Czechoslovakia, and cried, because I didn't get my one page with Ingmar Bergman, and Bibi because she didn't get this enormous part. Oh, that was fantastic. I don't dance at all. But I had a husband called Gene Kelly, and I think we even had a dance together.
Yes, you do. You're like both dancing the Frug. It's like an early 70s movie. There's like a hippie party, and you're dancing at it. It's kind of wonderful. Well, we're going a little off topic here, but speaking of not dancing and not singing, you were cast in a Hollywood musical, now that Lost Horizon.
Yes, because this was the time when I was so tremendously popular, because I'd done 2 movies called The Emigrants in the New Land. Mm-hmm. Well, she was sad too a lot, because she was an immigrant and she came to a new land. But it was a wonderful, wonderful movie, and it was nominated for Oscar. And so I came to Hollywood, and they said, oh, this is the new Greta Garbo. And every movie that was going to be made, they came to me first. Mm-hmm. And my agent wasn't good about advice or anything. And they were going to make this musical, Lost Horizon. Mm-hmm. And whereas this movie is on every list of the best movies ever made, Lost Horizon is on the list of the 10 worst movies ever made, and that was the beginning of my Hollywood career. It was like Lost Horizon, then it was 40 Carats. Then they said, oh, she was wonderful, you know, doing The Emigrants, being this farm lady. And so they made a movie called Sandy's Bride.
Sandy's Bride.
But already, you know, the reputation had got to them, so that didn't go too well. And then she said, well, you know, Queen, she should do a Queen, and I did Queen Christina, and I did this in a little more than 1 year, and 2 studios almost went kaput, and, and that's the truth. So this happened in the beginning of my American career.
But my understanding is that you had fun with it.
I had fun. I didn't know while I did them that this would happen. and then when all that was finished, I went back to Ingmar Bergman and did, I think that was Scenes from a Marriage, many years after that. And it was the greatest success, so, you know, it didn't matter.
True. And here we are. So let's go back to persona. You're 25 years old. You're thinking of yourself as a comic actress to an extent. You get this script from this man with a reputation. You read this script. What are your first impressions? And what are your impressions of Bergman at that point?
Well, Ingmar Bergman wrote it, and it wasn't completely finished when we got it either, because he wasn't 3 months in the hospital. So the first 10 days or so didn't go so well in Stockholm, and then he got the idea, let's go to this island and finish the movie there. And then he wrote also some new scenes on the island. What I thought about it is, I am so happy. I'm working with what I believed then, and I still believe, one of the greatest directors in the world. I had seen, yes. I had seen almost all of the movies he had made. He touched me. He touched the soul of me. I couldn't always explain it. I didn't always understand it intellectually, but I understood it with my feelings, and that I was then so lucky that I would be in every movie he made, except Fanny and Alexander and The Touch, is for me the best thing that ever happened to me in movies artistically, and the best things that ever happened to me with a friend and with the father of my child. And I am tremendously, tremendously grateful. And sometimes I think, and he's been away for some years now, it feels lonely, because sometimes I would like to go to him and ask him for things, because he always liked my questions, and he always gave wonderful answers. I felt very adequate knowing him. Yeah.
But when you started the film, when you came to the film, he had a reputation as a tantrum thrower on the set, as sort of a dictator on the set. At what point did you realize that might not be true?
Well, he wasn't really a dictator on the set. He was mostly very kind and good with the actors, but he would always find one person on every film that would get it, that did mistakes and so all the time. And 2 films when we lived together, which was The Shame and The Passion of Anna, he wouldn't come like a dictator to me. He did it very smoothly, kind of, you know. He would have me in a boat in The Shame when it was very, very cold, and I couldn't be dressed at all because I was supposed to be freezing, and we couldn't come out of the boats because it would take so long time, and I was freezing. He would do things like that, a little on purpose. But on the set, as a director, he was always incredibly towards the actors, because they were to create and he wasn't somebody who believed that you could force somebody to create from violence or anger. You had to allow people, trust people, to create from who they were and why they were. He was an incredible director, and he showed trust. And often now when I worked without him, I rely on his trust in my ability.
By the way, the films that Liv made with Bergman after Persona, that run of late 60s films, Hour of the Wolf, Shame, and Passion of Anna, are incredible movies. I recommend that you seek them out on disc. I watched them again recently, not because I had to for this, but because I wanted to, and I think they're among his best work. And you're fantastic. And the men very different in each film, which is, they're radically different roles. I'd be curious to know about, especially when you're dealing with this kind of script, which is dealing with lots of abstract emotions and ideas. How did the filming come about? Were there rehearsals? Did you block stuff out? Were there many takes? How did the filming proceed?
No, there were no rehearsals, and Ingmar didn't like to make many takes of each scene, and I agree with him, because very often in the first scene you give as much as you can, but he has an atmosphere. He doesn't tell you exactly what to do and how to do it or what you're thinking, but he watches you. It's the best audience in the world, is Ingmar. He listens to you. He stands very close to the camera. And it is to have an incredible inspiration there. He always said, I give my script away, and I believe that the actors read the script and understands the script, and I allow them to create. I learned from him that a director must also believe in his actors, that they will create more than is exactly in the script. And he did that. And to have that trust made you give more than maybe you would do to other directors.
Did you block scenes? I mean, was there improvisation? Or?
Yes. No. It's only one movie where there was improvisation that we did, which was in The Shame. In this movie, he blocked it very much. You sit there, and then to Bibi, then on this line you go there, and so he blocked it very well. But then he allowed you to know when you get up how you go and why you go there. Can I give you one example?
Please.
It's a movie called Face to Face.
Face to Face, yes.
I was in my mother's home, and I was going to commit suicide. And it's just before he will say, okay, start. I hear him say to the one who gives out, what do you say, requisita?
The prop master?
The prop master.
Yeah.
Oh, you took out the sleeping pills from that thing, didn't you? And put other sugar pills instead. And he said it, and he knew I heard it. and that was my inspiration. I was to sit there, I was to take pills, and then sit down, lie down maybe on the bed, and that was what he told me. So
just lie down on the bed.
Yeah.
That was the only direction that he gave you.
Yeah, lie on the bed. And then he says, camera. First of all, I shiver. I've always done that. It's not my age. And so I held the medicine, the bottle with medicine in my hand, and it shivers. And I thought, oh, that's good, it shivers. That's going to look very good. And I started to take the sugar pills. It may be sleeping pills, And my fantasy worked. And so I was part of his fantasy. And so I took a little pill, and then I took more and more, and I emptied the pill box. And then I sat there. I didn't know. He hadn't told me what to do. So I sit there. I'm in my childhood bedroom at my mother's. It's a little strange. And so I lie down on the bed, and it didn't stop me. And the tapestry on the wall was like when I was a child, and I knew that too. And I could put my hand on it and stroke it, and maybe I did that as a child. And I was shivering, and I was very moved by myself, because this is my last minute in life. And I stroked it, and tears came to my eyes, because I was a little moved again by myself. And he didn't stop it. And then I thought, what time am I dying? And I looked at my watch. And this is the time. And I started to be tired. And then I was just lying there. And then he said, stop. And then he said, well, I will never have to do my suicide myself. And that was like a compliment. And he had just allowed me to listen to him, to hear, to have the script and improvise. But that was my improvisation, not his. In the other movie, the one where we were allowed to improvise, which was The Shame, it was Max von Sydow and I sitting at the table, and he says, you are so much in love, and you just talk to each other and just say good, wonderful things to each other, and then you have been drinking, and the more you're sitting at the table, the more you are feeling for each other, and more or less you fall down from your chair and you're lying there on the earth, and you are just so much in love. Do it now, improvise. And I was a little in love with Max von Sydow, so it was very easy. And that is the only time, because he never allowed it. And we couldn't change a word, like Autumn Sonata, Ingrid Bergman and I, who played the other lead. We wanted to change it because it was about, a professional woman who is neglective to her child. And we thought, why should a professional woman be neglective to her child? Men are not. Why should women be? Don't change a word. Act like you will, but don't change a word. So he was very, very protecting his words.
One thing I wanted to ask was about you and Bibi on the set. Was there ever any conversation about switching the roles? I mean, how was it decided that she play Alma and you play Elizabeth, or where did that come from?
Well, obviously, she is this incredible actress, and she's Swedish, and I mean, this is a movie of dialogue, which comes from her. My dialogue is in my eyes, in my face. I could never have done it, and at that time I couldn't have done it either, because I didn't speak Swedish. We talked, and I lived with Bibi in her house. We talked in the evening, and I was, she would do the text, and I would prompt her, and we talked. Do you understand this? And how is this? But we had a wonderful time, and we had been friends for so long. And when we lived there on the island, when we made the movie there. We talked about the future, and we talked about so many things. We have been friends for like 57 years, because we made a movie some years before this, Persona. She's the only one who is alive of the people who were part of this movie, but she had a stroke, and for 7 years we cannot talk to each other. I talk to her. It's like she has my part.
Oh my God.
She's just listening to me, and I know that she knows who I am. And it's strange to have your best friend living a life that I know she wouldn't really like to live, and to see her here so full of life and so full of talent. She's a remarkable woman. I have to say that, because she she is alive, and she would have enjoyed to be here and sit with me and experience what I can experience and which she cannot anymore experience.
If you go to see her anytime soon, give her our love and tell her we enjoyed her performance immensely.
I will.
You touched on something a little earlier about acting with your eyes, and there's a famous story around the film about Bergman telling you in the scene where B.B. Anderson is giving the monologue about the orgy on the beach that he told you to concentrate your emotions in your lips. Is that true?
You know what? Because I've read that too, that he says, oh, look at Liv, you know, she makes her lips swell. I looked at it, and for the longest time I thought, there he lies again, because I was sitting like this. You couldn't even see my lips. But in the end, yes, you saw my lips. But no, I cannot make my lips swell. But
okay. Good to know. This is the Liv Ullmann rumored debunking tour. But just going back, how do you play such a reactive role? Where do you put the emotions? How do you, what part of your instrument are you sort of working with?
Feelings. I'm all about feelings. You know, there are different kind of actors. Some are character actors, and some are actor studio. You know, soon they're going to do like this, and you can also know that beforehand. And some are feeling actors. You know, I am too young, probably. She has a lot of past, this woman, and I can see it. I'm not so sure she had that past, but Ingmar wanted it, and for him it was right that I was so young. We were 25, and he wanted us, so that also must be a reason.
As an actress, especially now looking at it after 50 years, are there moments where you go, I wouldn't have done that later in life? Or
oh God, yes. But you know, I think that was probably more right, because I know today I probably would have done more with my face and so, instead of allowing it to be the face, which is a face that also is not speaking. But you see from the eyes, you see from the mouth, you see from her smile that there's someone there. But she is not giving it all emotions that I usually do as an actress. And so probably that is better than I would have done today, because I would do more, and that probably would have been wrong.
One of the most striking things about this film, and many of his films, especially from this era in his career, is the use of close-ups, especially for you coming from primarily stage at that point in your career, correct? How do you dial that down? Was it hard for you to dial that down from having to convey to the back row to convey to this camera that's this far from your face?
No, I like that, you know, because if you have trust in the director, the script, and the cameraman, it is wonderful with a camera that comes close to your face. It is like being with someone you really love, and you dare to let that person see who you really are. And sometimes you can do it from the stage, but more often you can do it with the camera. And there are a lot of actors who do not like that kind of close-ups. I really do, because I really want to convey as close as I can to another human being who this woman is. And I know the first film I directed, called Sophia, I felt such wonder, and I didn't know how good that could really be, when there was a very difficult scene, and the main actress, she was standing behind the piano, and her parents were sitting there and telling her, you know, you cannot marry the man you love, etc. And it was all on her face at that moment. And the camera goes, and I'm sitting there behind the camera, and I was maybe thinking to myself, it was in the beginning of the movie, oh, I could really have done that. And then she started, and it was incredible. From this face came such wondrous feelings and disappointment and fear and everything. It was a long scene, and all happened in her face. And I thank God it's not Liv standing there. Thank God I can sit and watch somebody with new feelings, with real feelings, with pure feelings. And I knew that my whole acting career really was just something that I learned from and that I now really could use as a director. I wish I had started earlier, and I wish I could have done more films, but if you give an actor trust, they will create wonderfully if they are good actors.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw out another recommendation here. If you can find a copy of a movie called Faithless, which was a film Liv directed from a script, the last script by Ingmar Bergman, which is a marvelous, unrelenting film and feels very true to his spirit and your spirit as well. And when you're directing, did you find that maybe you had to become a little bit of a dictator on the set sometimes?
No.
Even
no,
with the crew?
There he was. I told you he was. It could be. I was never. I have such love and I have such respect for actors. And if they are good, they like to work with me. Twice I've had somebody who wasn't that good, and they don't like it too much. You know, they say, but we actors, the way we do. Yes, I know. I said I've been an actor too. You know, but like for example with Lena Endre in
Faithless.
In Faithless, she's an incredible, incredible Swedish actress, and she had a long monologue where she was telling about that she was leaving her husband. She was telling her little daughter of 7 years old, I'm leaving your father and I'm going to move together with another man, and you cannot come with me first because I and the other man have to be alone together, and you will stay with daddy until you will come to me. And she tells this story, and it was fantastic. Really fantastic. And the whole technical, all the people watching, when she was finished, they did an applaud because she was so good. Yes, she was good, but she was actressy good. I said to her, there's one thing that will always be with you for the rest of your life. When you're telling this story to your daughter, I'm leaving you and you are not welcome with me. And your little daughter is going away from you, and she was dressed in a little sweatshirt, and you will see her move away from you, and you will see her thin little shoulders go up to her ears. She will never turn and look at you, and she will go out of the door and she will disappear. That sight of your little daughter you will never forget in your life. Now, Lena, that is part of your story too, and she knew that, but she weaved it into. And when she had done the scene one more time, it was so quiet. It was better than an applause. Everyone felt it deep in their heart. She was a genius. Sometimes you have to even remind geniuses that they are human beings too, and they will forever live with what they do and say, both in movies and in life.
We have time for a couple more questions. One thing we haven't touched on with Persona, and in reading about it, and in some of your earlier comments about it, it's clear that that you have a large crew, but there's really 4 people that made this movie, and that's Ingmar, yourself, Bibi, and Sven Nykvist, who we haven't really talked about. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about him and his part in this film, because, well, first of all, Gunnar Fischer had been Bergman's cinematographer for much of it,
Gunnar Fischer, yeah.
Right, for Wild Strawberries and Seven Seal and all those classic images. and Nyqvist came in with a different look. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about his personality on the set and what he brought to it.
He is so lovely. He's up there too. He's the best cinematographer there ever was. He's fantastic. And Ingmar and they never really talked. They understood each other. They really understood each other. Would be a word there and a word here, and they would know. He was so gentle and so lovely to the actors. You felt so safe to be in front of his camera. And he would say, oh, you know, I could hardly see it because I had so much tears in my eyes. He would say things like that. And when we were there on the island, and in the evenings we had wonderful time, Sven Nyqvist, Ingmar Bergman, Bibi and I, we would walk on the beach and we would sit and tell ghost stories and so. And Sven Nyqvist didn't understand when Bibi, towards the end of being on the island, and Ingmar and I was kind of walking a little closer together, and Bibi said to Sven, come, let us run away from them. And Sven said, why should we run away from them? And he didn't. And he was a God's creation in the world. I never saw anything about him that wasn't good and gentle and fine. And I, as a director, worked with him in 2 films until he became too sick to work. And I love him dearly. He was a good man. And all, you know, Ingmar Bergman, they always talk about that, and that is right. But when you meet a cinematographer in the world, wherever, they talk about Sven Nyqvist, because most of them will say, he is my ideal as a cinematographer.
How much is he responsible for the look of some of these scenes? There's some absolutely striking scenes, especially the ones that seem to almost have a mist passing in, you know, between the lens and the scene.
Yeah. Creative people can sometimes exchange almost without words. And again, it was the script. And again, it would be Ingmar, you know, talking about the scene to all of us, what I'd like this to be, and so, but never, you know, go into practicalities, because if he trusted someone's instinct and creativity, Ingmar trusted Sven. And I remember we had an American film team, I think it was 60 Minutes or somebody, who came. We were doing scenes from a marriage on the island, and they came to make a documentary about Sven Nyqvist. And they called it The Master of Light. And suddenly he put a lot of lights everywhere. And he had very, very few lights natural. But no, for this team, light there and there and there. And Ingmar was good, he didn't say a word. Yeah. And it took like 2 hours to light the whole scene and so. And the camera, they were shooting, and they were marveled of all this light. And then they left, and then Ingmar said, okay, take down the lights, and now let's do the scene.
The last thing I want to touch on is what you sort of touched on at the very beginning, which is that most people coming to this movie for the first time try to crack it for meaning, and try and figure out what the symbolism is and what it means. And many, many words have been expounded over the years in essays by famous writers. Susan Sontag, for instance, and Pauline Kael have weighed in on this movie and have analyzed it and pulled it apart and decoded it. And I think that's often a recipe for disaster. Well, my question to you is, what does it mean? Why is that the wrong question to ask for this film?
I don't know. You know, I think some of the time also I was thinking of some of you that I know here and care very much for. Oh, I hope they will get something from it, because I won't be able to explain it. And I did say when I came here, I cannot explain it. And I know incredible words has been written about it. And I know Ingmar also wondered about that, because he was satisfied. We had a wonderful time together, and this movie meant everything for him, but he didn't explain it either. And I cannot explain it, but I can tell you something happened within me. And then, yes, I was worried about that some people will wonder, now, why is that so famous? Or what is this all about? It's about something you may have felt at some time during the movie. Sometime something may have reminded you of something. A whole movie doesn't have to be everything that you understand and get, but sometimes you are touched by the truth and you don't even know you were. And in 2 or 3 days it will come to, oh yes, maybe that was what it was about. But to look and to hear this is such a famous movie, yes, that may be difficult for someone. And it became also difficult for me, you know, but I know it is because it has touched so many people. And it continues to do that after 50 years. And only books and big compositions have such a long life as this movie has had.
I think we'll end it there. Thank you so much.